that has to do with the city. Okay? Chamber during meetings in the city council. Members of the audience will be provided an opportunity to address the council during public hearings and during action items. Please speak into the microphone located at the podium. State your name and address, and if you have a petition or other information pertaining to your subject, please present it to the city secretary. State law generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda, but if appropriate, the council may schedule the topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor may call a point of order to stop personal attacks. If an individual continues to personally attack an elected official or staff member, they may be barred. Now call meeting to order. We'll have the invocation led by the Reverend Alan Christopherson. Am I correct? Yes.
Let's pray together. Gracious Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that you give us to serve, Lord. And for all those here, I pray that you'll give them clarity of mind. And Lord, I pray the things that are done and said in this room and in this city, Lord, bring you honor and glory. We're grateful for this time. We honor you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
For the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
City Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Mayor, we do have a quorum, and the notice was posted on 8:30 a.m. on February 15, 2019.
Thank you. We don't have any presentations or recognitions today. I don't have there's no reports, and no public hearings, consent agenda, minutes, financial reports, department written reports, board appointed. We have none. And notice to the public, the following items are of routine administrative nature. The council has been furnished with background and support material on each item, and or it has been discussed at a previous meeting. All items will be acted upon by one vote without being discussed separately unless requested by a council member, in which event the item or items will immediately be withdrawn for individual consideration in this normal sequence after the items not requiring separate discussion have been acted upon. The remaining items will be adopted by one vote. And item 7, information or discussion items. City Manager.
Mayor, for the agenda, we have the council workshop to discuss city fees and charges and a master fee ordinance.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the action items. I'm sorry,
That's right.
we got the agenda. I'm sorry, I've got bad cold. So, you want to start?
Mayor and council, in your packets, you have the draft ordinance that covers most of the fees that we charge in the city for various services. It was formatted in a master fee ordinance in order to make it easier to address fees in the future and moving forward from this point. At a previous meeting, you all were provided with a spreadsheet with comparisons to kind of what other cities were charging for those same services or similar services. After that presentation, it was returned back to the department heads to review, to determine, to come up with a proposed fee that could then be presented to you through this ordinance.
Okay.
And I believe that all of the departments are represented here, except for the gas department.
Except for the gas department, they're not here.
I had thought when we talked about this last, Jessica, that there was going to be proposed versus current, and this only shows current, or what, I'm sorry, only
This
shows
is only proposed.
Doesn't show the current. So,
Right.
yeah, I went out with my old sheet and looked at the old stuff, so. Okay. There's no one have 87,000 questions, so you probably have to end with me as opposed to start with me.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking at you.
Honorable Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we table the discussion on city fees and charges and the master fee ordinance. And I say this because the original proposal that was submitted to me, I shared that with some of the folks in my ward. And there was some confusion as to why these fees for one existed, why some of them are steep. So I felt like maybe we need to do a little bit more research. We also need to do maybe a little bit more public awareness so that folks out there know what these fees being charged are for, and the funding that's collected from them, what is it used for?
Okay. So you're making a motion to table this?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
That sounds reasonable.
Okay, I've got a second.
So point of order, this is not an action item list.
But
This is for discussion.
That's for discussion only. We're not gonna pass anything on it. Now, am I correct?
You can table it like any other item,
Mhm.
if you don't want to have the discussion tonight.
Right.
Like that, you just like any other motion to table.
Because it's a pretty lengthy, and I think we really need to be diligent in some of these fees. So I suggest that, and I agree with Ramon, that we should table it, study it more in depth before we take action on it.
We're not taking action.
We're not taking action, we're
This is
studying,
just
but
discussion.
we're gonna table this. Okay? Now, motion's been made and been second, and is there any discussion?
Yes,
Yes.
so the discussion is, what's the plan then? We got this 3 weeks ago, had the opportunity to go review it, we talked about it in information and
Right.
discussion right here in council. We all agreed we ought to bring it back to a subsequent meeting, which was scheduled for tonight. And then that gave us the opportunity to go off and do some work to understand it. This is being proposed for discussion as leading to an ordinance. There will be, this would come to council at least twice more, along with a public hearing. So what's not clear to me is, what else are we gonna go do that would lead to that discussion?
Okay.
Because if we table it, last time we all talked about it, we'll bring it to this meeting, we brought it to this meeting, and now we say we need more time. So I'm trying to understand what more time is needed. I personally have gone to my constituents, had discussions, got feedback, got emails, had dialogue, and what we're talking about. I just wondered how much longer does it take to go talk about it?
Yeah. And I think Ramon also did the same thing, and you're only postponing to do what, the next meeting, or?
The only thing I recommend is, yes, discussion is needed, and I agree with Councilman Stevens that at some point, once we come to a point, or we come to agreement, then the ordinance will be shared with the general public so that we get a feedback on the city fees and charges. And then after going through it twice, then we would vote on it. But right now, it seems to me like this is rather lengthy, and to be honest with you, as I went through there and as I sat down with some members of my ward, they also felt like, my gosh, this is a lot of stuff in here, things that they were not aware of. And then they looked at the fee specifically. As an example, the Animal Control Board, and finding out that the high fines for animals that have been picked up, and they felt like, why is so high a fee? And I felt like maybe we really need to study it a bit more on an individual basis, and then come back and do further deliberation among ourselves. Maybe we should go to our wards and find out what their needs and feelings are as well. And then come back.
Well, I would comment, I appreciate that, I would comment that this whole fee structure already exists out in existing ordinances. The wisdom of putting it in one ordinance is so that we don't have to go through ordinance after ordinance after ordinance, which are all individual by department. So that was the rationale behind it. And I would agree, there's a lot of people I've talked to had no idea that these fees are in place, but they are already in place.
Yeah.
So
And there's also some more that are gonna be added on to
there are
this.
some being added, no question.
Right.
But I think part of the feedback's got to be, and a lot of these already exist, we're talking about is changing fees. Is, you know, adoptions, for example. Adoptions, city currently charges $70 for every animal adoption right now. Has been doing that, and for those who adopt an animal, they know. So that's why I asked the question, how much and what will it take to go do this? Because I
Yeah,
wish
like
it was
the-
non-trivial.
Do you have a time frame?
I don't personally, but maybe I'll leave it up to the group to come to a time.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Olivas, what other information do you think you need at this point? Because you mentioned like where the money goes to and things like that. Would it be helpful if in the draft of the ordinance, animal control fees, and then stated these fees are collected for the purpose of, and then whatever that is per department? Or do you want to see that in a separate breakdown?
Okay, I like the structure right now regarding putting all the fees under one ordinance. That makes a lot of sense. But I think that maybe we need further input for the public, at least from my end of it, from folks in my ward, to come back with a more, let's say, favorable response to our discussions. And people in the board don't even know a lot of this exists. In fact, one of the major items that came up when I showed folks about the animal control fees is cremation. And they said, my gosh, we have a crematory? We cremate animals here? And to be honest with you, I don't even know myself. And I guess we do. Thank you. Yeah. So people out there don't know.
Is there any more discussion? All those in favor of tabling it, raise your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries 3-2. So we'll table it for further consideration. And we'll have to set a date, a timeline on this so we get it over.
Can we set that date now?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that going to be another
What's that?
workshop? Is that going to be another
Yeah.
workshop or special?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
we are, Cynthia sent off the public hearing notice to be advertised for March 5th.
Mhm.
No, it's going to be in the paper on Thursday.
It's March 5th, this
So it'll be the next meeting.
next
No,
meeting.
actually it needs to be published twice. It'll be posted the 21st and the 28th. And then council can do anything they want early in March. The public hearings will start in March. But that's not going to be the case now since this has been postponed.
So,
Mick, is there anything that precludes us from having a public hearing
You can
as
have it.
part of discussion?
You can have that, you can have
So
public
we could
input.
continue and say that was a public hearing for the eventual ordinance
No,
adoption?
once we have the ordinance actually proposed, we must, under the charter, have
So
a
you have to have
public
another
hearing
one.
notice.
You have a public
There's
hearing?
nothing wrong with having another public hearing prior to that time, but it won't replace the charter required public hearing.
And my concern is, we as council need the opportunity to talk about this amongst us. When we get into public hearing, we can't respond. And so we need, my view is we need the opportunity to talk about this. In addition to numbers, I have concerns about the formatting of the document that need to be cleaned up. For example, under water is gas and water. So there's a whole slug of formatting issues that need to get cleaned up before we can get into the fee discussion. we need to have, which is before we would have a draft ordinance, which is before we go to the real public hearing. So I just think we need a little more thought about what we think that might look like, particularly since we've asked all the city departments to be here tonight, and now we're gonna say, have a nice evening, which they probably want to say they're gonna go have good dinners. But, so anyway, that's why I kind of look and say, we ought to think about this a little bit, and if I think a little bit out loud, we have city council meetings on the 5th and the 19th, that's our regular scheduled meeting. Would we be ready as council to be able to talk about on the 5th or the 19th?
Council?
I'm happy to do it whenever I'm ready to go into it.
So the 5th, guys?
So the 5th, or the other option would be a special meeting for council?
Mhm.
For council only?
Well, if it's council, it's got to be public.
It's good.
So it would
So
be a
that's
workshop.
that's what discussion and information allows us to talk about, still in public forum.
So we do it on the 5th,
Why not?
okay? So for the 5th,
March 5th?
So March 5th, we'll put this on the agenda for a lengthy, it'll be a, my sense is fairly lengthy information discussion. Having said that now, set for the 5th, let's talk about what the implications are for the notice, Cynthia, that you said you published for the 21st and 28th.
Yes, sir.
And it is advertising a public hearing for the 5th of March. So I presume we don't want to do that now. Okay, so,
We call one back. Yeah, we can cancel the one for the 28th.
okay,
okay, we still have time to do it.
yep, okay, so you can, okay, so you'll pull those back, and then, just from the sequence standpoint, so we'll do our meeting on the 5th for, under information discussion, in the same format we were gonna do tonight. That gives us another 2 weeks to go talk to our constituents, which is the right thing, gather information, so we come back more informed. On the 5th, we'll have our information discussion, and then following up with that, our sequence is then, in theory, the 19th of March would be the next opportunity to look at the first reading of the ordinance. We probably want, and what we adopted as a council was we would do the first reading. We could, and that would give us the opportunity to do any nits or lice or fix it or whatever, because I wouldn't expect to come out of the 5th with a final. With the 19th, we probably would. Given the 19th, that we reach alignment after the first reading, we could then ask that a public hearing be held for the next meetings, which would be the 2nd of April. That would leave time for publication. Nope, you're gonna have the publication on the 28th and the 4th, so the earliest we could do it then
It's the 16th.
would be the 16th of April. For a
It'll be
public
the
hearing,
second meeting.
which would be that'd be the public hearing, and then we have the latitude as council, having heard public hearing, so long as we don't make any adjustments, we could approve, but if we make adjustments based upon public hearing, we're into that loop again, which is another month or so.
Yep.
So that's just kind of the sequence.
So we just need to do our homework.
Yeah, does that all make sense?
Yeah, the only question I would have is for the March 5th meeting, as we, in open forum, get to our discussion, will there be time, will there be an allowance for the public to also participate?
No, no, no.
No, no.
That would be a closed council meeting, but in open forum. Then when we start, when we come to terms and we bring the ordinance forth, then that's when the public.
That's what public hearing is.
Right.
Yes. And that looks like that public hearing would be, as I think we just said, the 16th of April.
That could be first public hearing.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
First public for April 16th.
Yeah. And now that's still no different than on, you know, this one, since it's long, it just doesn't get published in the newspaper, but there'd be copies here at City Hall for people to be able to pick up and have discussions. And they can talk to all of us one-on-one, however they want.
Yeah.
We'll keep, have a plan. That's all it's
Look forward
about,
to
work
it.
on a plan.
Okay.
Okay.
move on to item 8, action items to be accompanied by a brief statement of facts, including where funds are coming from, if applicable. Action items limited to up to 10 per meeting. Citizens are allowed to comment, limited to 3 minutes after being called upon by the mayor. Citizens are required to state their name and the ward in which they reside. Priority will be given to the citizens of Alpine and those who own business or property in the city. Individuals who do not live in or own business or property in the city limits of Alpine will be allowed to speak at this time available. Okay, we have none there.
Council comments is next.
Council comments is next. So we'll start with, I think we started with you last time.
You did.
Yes, I did. So we'll start with Ms. Curry.
Well, I guess thanks everybody for coming.
Same here.
You're next.
You done?
Yeah, you done? That was quick.
Damn. Yeah, I don't mean to be a stick in the mud, but as most of you know, the last few months I've been in several hospitals here in Michigan. And I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I have medical issues.
And I just wanted to thank y'all for coming.
Thanks for coming, good to see everyone.
Thank you all very much for coming, and hopefully on the 5th, everybody will have visited with the respective wards to make sure that everybody's on board as to what the fees are, and we can bring it back and then present it back again. So thank you all very much. I want to thank the department heads for being here also. I know you work all day and out in the field and the cold elements and whatnot, but now you go home and get a good hot supper early. Thank y'all.
Cold beer.
Mayor, next you have executive session.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Mayor, pursuant to Texas Government Code 55-1.074 to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, assignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of public employee, I move that we move into executive session.
Okay. We need a break.
Okay. I made the motion, and the second was by Fitz, no, Ramon. Ramon, okay. We closed executive session at 8:05. I made the motion, Ramon made the second. Yes,
And everybody voted.
and everyone voted, and it passed.
Fitz left during.
Fitz left during executive session. He was not feeling well. No, he's struggling.
So 20:05
Okay.
is when you came back in the open session.
20:05, you got it. That's when I came back in open session. We just gave that.
All right.
Okay, so let's get going.
So I move we move back into regular session.
Okay. Second.
So,
All agreed?
Who's second?
Ramon.
Okay.
Okay.
okay, Mr. Mayor, I propose that we take the following 3 actions. First is we table the performance evaluation of the city manager. Second is we take action to hire an independent city manager consultant that reports to the city council to assist in personnel matters. Number 3, during the period that the independent city manager consultant is supporting the city council, that we will invoke section 3.11 of the city charter to investigate all actions associated with termination of employees.
Okay, sirs. Second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion been made and second. Any discussion?
Could you go over that last part, please? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Action number 3 is during the time period that the independent city manager consultant is supporting city council, that the city council will invoke section 3.11 of the city charter that says we will investigate and review any terminations of anyone in the city.
We would investigate?
That's what the title is, would review.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it? So motion's been made, second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Swear.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to adjourn.
Not debated.
What time is that on there?